folks. Hope you're doing well on this beautiful, fantastic Wednesday morning. I'm losing track of the days these days because so much is happening in the news all the dang time. And it doesn't help when your prime minister is traveling the world and on the other side of the world, so things are happening while you're asleep. And of course, you have the conflict in Iran that is also happening while you're asleep. You have Poilievre, who's in the UK, who's doing things as you're waking up, and you're just like, holy smokes. It's a very different news cycle this week because so much is happening as you wake up, and it's like an extension of the Olympics almost happening at this point. You're just like, oh. Last night I went to bed. Mark Carney got upset at some reporters. I was watching that take place and everyone getting upset with Mark Carney doing what he's doing. I was like, okay, here we go. Classic Mark Carney. Changing his perspectives, getting mad at the media after he ignored them for a week. And, that took place. And then I woke up this morning to a video of him bragging about drinking the finest of wines during the 2008 crisis as he was being paid to help fix the financial crisis and work with Stephen Harper on that. And we'll be covering all that today. There's a lot to cover. We got a lot to discuss. I'm seeing the chats popping off this morning. I love to see it. You guys are fantastic individuals. Such a beautiful, beautiful people. Even the homies who hate me. Even the homies who think my views are repulsive and disgusting. I love you too, because you just make life so much more fragrant and make debate more interesting. So thank you for joining us on this amazing Wednesday. We love to have you. I saw someone in the chat mention, hey, haven't seen Jasmine in quite some time. What's going on with her? Well, Jasmine has been enjoying her time with family down in the Bahamas. So she'll be getting back here shortly, but she was just taking some time off to be with her family, which I 100% support. I'm glad that she's doing that. So we have some things to discuss. Obviously, top of the hour, we'll discuss what happened yesterday, which most people know what's happened, but we'll kind of go over that territory just so that we can get everyone up to speed and we can move on with what's happening today. As well as you have Pierre Poilievre in the UK delivering a great speech in the UK about free markets and how having free markets has helped propel the Western world to amazing, amazing heights. And we should get back to doing that and not succumb to the likes of the socialists who want to just regulate everything and bring us back to the dark ages. So he also put out some inspiring videos on top of that too. So there's a lot to discuss. We're going to hit the early super chats before we get into that. We have the likes of, oh my gosh, I love when I have to refresh and get things back in order here. All right. Tara Bot became a new member. Let's go. Drop $2, drop $10 just for me existing. I appreciate that. Jessica says, flip flop Carney. Yeah, it's kind of that's how it's being perceived. That's for sure. And then you have Just Me Nicole says, remember that all opinions are welcome here. Please keep it respectful. Always great to have debates of opinions. Dang straight, Nicole. We love to see it. That's the energy we want to start our day off today. And we're going to start off with this energy right now. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. I'm pretty sure that's the official name. Is that? Yep. U.S. Secretary of War. He had this to say. And so I want to start off with him talking about the U.S.'s stance, at least at this present time, with this conflict with Iran, what they're planning to do. You can agree or disagree. However, this is what he had to come out and say in the press about this, and we're going to compare and contrast this to the likes of Mr. Mark Carney.
U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over. And Iran will be able to do nothing about it. B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky all day long. We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. Thus far, Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003, minus Paul Bremer and the nation building.
So that's what Pete Hegseth had to say about the engagement in Iran at this present time. And there's a swift amount of debate around this conflict at this point, where you have the left who are saying, please, no, protect the supreme leader at all costs. We want more of what he has to offer. You have the left who are cheering for that, which is just wild to watch. I laugh every time I see a post about it. I'm like, these people can't be for real. They have literally no principle. As long as it's against the right, that's the stance they'll take. So you have that happening. But now you have this debate happening on the right where, again, millennials, people of my generation, are very well accustomed to forever wars. We're very well accustomed to regime change wars and what that's done to our nations respectively. It's done the U.S., and because Canada is connected to the hip of the U.S., it's affected our people at home here as well. So people are a little like, what's happening here? Are we seeing another George Bush situation, Iraq all over again, weapons of mass destruction? Is that what we're witnessing here? Or is this actually going to be calculated, as Pete Hegseth is suggesting here, and trying to hit them while they're down and completely eliminate them? And there's that swift debate happening, and I think it's a very reasonable debate to have because, well, it's war. People's lives are on the line right now. You have the debate of like, well, we want to free the Iranian people, and we want to make sure that they are taken care of. And we want to give them a proper governance and allow them to be free once again. That's the debate. The other side of it is, it seems like you're using the Iranian people to engage in another war that will never end. And America should have nothing to do with it. And Israel is dragging America into this war. That is what's happening. We have the likes of Israel, who has announced something along the lines of trying to open up 100,000 reservists to get ready for, I would imagine, assume, boots on the ground in Iran. And this is where the challenge is right now and why the debate is happening. I'm at this point where I've said on this show, I'm taking Trump at his word right now, and I'm reserving judgment until that 4 to 5 weeks. That was the promise. 4 to 5 weeks. We can go much longer, but it's only going to be 4 to 5 weeks. So that's what I'm reserving my judgment on, how this is all going to transpire and where we're going to go with it. However, let's move over to the conversation. And I think that I love right now is I kind of laid that out there because the chat's going to pop off on that debate. And I love seeing the debates in the chat. Chat's always good having that debate. It's always fun. As long as it's respectful. But I know it's heated right now. However, we move over. So we hear Pete Hegseth say this, and he's very decisive in what the U.S. is going to do. And it's like, we're gonna knock him silly. Because again, the one other point I want to make too is the 12-day war that took place in June 2025. Trump said that was the time that they had knocked out all the nuclear facilities in Iran, which again is another reasoning why they have to go into Iran is to take out all their nuclear facilities and the capabilities. Trump announced that happened in June. Now here we are doing the same thing to them for the same reason. That's what's causing so much debate right now. And I'll admit, I'll say this about Donald Trump. He's not someone who likes to admit he's wrong very often. So I do tend to believe that this is about trying to take out any type of nuclear capabilities because Donald Trump doesn't want to make himself look like a fool when it comes to this type of stuff. And he's saying, yeah, we're going to have to take out the nuclear capabilities. Even though I said last June that's what happened, likely the U.S. failed at that. That's not exactly what happened. And they're actually having to go and do it again. So that's where I stand on it right now. But again, as I said, reserving judgment for the next 4 to 5 weeks. We'll see what happens. Now I get back to my point here. Pete Hegseth being very decisive of what the U.S. is going to do in tandem with Israel in taking out and going after Iran. And now we compare and contrast that to, Mark Carney's take on it, where he said the other day, he backed U.S. on their strikes of Israel, of Iran. And And then he, came out yesterday and said this.
Efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. Because Canada is taking the world as it is, not passively waiting for a world we wish to be. We do, however, take this position with regret because the current conflict is another example of the failure of the international order. Despite decades of UN Security Council resolutions, the tireless work of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the succession of sanctions and diplomatic frameworks, Iran's nuclear threat remains. And now, the United States and Israel have acted without engaging the United Nations or consulting allies, including Canada. So where to from here? With a rapidly spreading conflict and growing threats to civilian life. Canada reaffirms that international law binds all belligerents. We condemn the strikes carried out by Iran on civilians and civilian infrastructure across the Middle East. And we implore all parties, including the United States and Israel, to respect the rules of international engagement. Canada calls for a rapid de-escalation of hostilities and is prepared to assist in achieving this goal.
So you had Mark Carney come out and saying, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this paper here. A lot of cool words on this paper here. We condemn Iran for targeting civilian infrastructure. We call for United States and Israel to begin de-escalation. Oh, man, I got to tell my speechwriter to increase the font on this one. It's a little small. That's what Mark Carney just did right there, right? Didn't really feel a whole lot of confidence. And so he's the debate, or at least the position he's taking on this is, I'm having the same opinion. It's just a little more nuanced now. It's a bit of a more nuanced opinion now. We begrudgingly supported the U.S. in doing this. They never told us about it, though. Never told us about it, didn't consult us, this, that, the other. They are breaching international law right now. Breaching international law. Breaking international law. And this is the fun part about all of this, is who's enforcing international law? Well, the UN. Who is the security backing of the UN? Well, the only reason the UN exists is because the United States is involved with the UN. So if the US is going to do what they're going to do, there is no one who's enforcing international law. The UN enforces international law by invoking the name of the United States. That's how that all works. So when the U.S. is saying, yeah, we're dumb, I'm annoyed with the UN and how they've treated us, this, that, the other, that's their stance, that's their take, that's how they view things. That's where they're going to go with it. And they're going to say, yeah, we're going after Iran. Nothing you can do about it, UN. So when you have Mark Carney standing up there saying, but words are violent. No, just kidding. But our words, listen to our words, de-escalate. Let's use diplomatic ways to bring this together. Let's tamp down the tensions. You want to hear something wild, folks? This conflict is so old that Billy Joel wrote a song about this. I think, was it in the 80s or the 90s? You can correct me in the chat on that one when that came out. And the line goes, Ayatollah in Iran. Sorry, I should pronounce it this way because it rhymes. Ayatollah in Iran, Russians in Afghanistan. Wheel of Fortune, Sally Ride, heavy metal suicide. Sorry, I could go on. I love that song. This conflict is so old that Billy Joel is writing about it. So it's been going on for quite some time here. Words have, I don't know. Have they done a good job? Has diplomacy worked? Don't know. I'll let the chat debate on that one. However, here we are now. And for the reason given is that they are close to building weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons. And again, the whole debate ensues, right? But this is the funny part. Is Pete Hegseth coming in saying, this is what we're doing. We're going in hard, and we're here to send a message. And Mark Carney saying there, please Words. We need words. More words. This is why Canada is getting left behind 6 ways of Sunday right now, folks. Because we can do nothing. We can do nothing but virtue signal. And say, we're going to say stuff because it has no consequence or bearing on anything. So, of course, Mark Carney can say whatever he so wants to because it has no consequence or bearing on what happens geopolitically. Sorry, Canada's not that big of a player. That's our own doing. Oops, did I say the quiet part out loud? Yes, that's how this all goes. So this is why only really Canadians are upset about this because it just makes our country look a certain way. He comes out and says, we support the U.S. and their strikes. Let's just replay that, shall we? Let's listen to that. Well, this is what he said the day the strikes took place. This is what he said.
Position on the developments in the Middle East remains clear. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the principal source of instability and terror throughout the Middle East. It has one of the world's worst human rights records and must never be allowed to obtain or develop nuclear weapons. Canada and our international partners have called consistently upon the Iranian regime to end its nuclear program, including at the G7 summit in Kananaskis and with the United Nations reimposition of sanctions this past September. We've sanctioned over 250 Iranian entities. We've listed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity. And despite numerous diplomatic efforts, Iran has neither fully dismantled its nuclear program, halted all enrichment activities, nor ended its support for regional terrorist proxy groups. Canada stands with the Iranian people in their long and courageous struggle against this oppressive regime, and we reaffirm Israel's right to defend itself. Canada supports the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. And the Canadian government urges the protection of all civilians in this conflict.
Wow. Okay, so again, that happened the day we support the U.S. and them trying to quell Iran from getting nuclear weapons. We support them. Then the fallout happens over the weekend. And this is the thing. This is what happens when Mark Carney did what he did. Ignored the media for a week as all hell is breaking loose all across the globe. And he has to come back to dealing with all this. And so you have everything blows up over the weekend. His base is losing their ever-loving minds. Saying, how dare he's a neocon. He's a fake liberal. He's conservative. He's no better than Poilievre. He sucks. We saw all that happen over the weekend. I was like, and over here, I'm like tweeting out. I was like, honestly, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by this response. And then here we go. Whoop. I saw, don't want to say this, but yeah, I saw what my base was saying and, maybe we should not support this. We bringing down the temperature. Let's use our words. Diplomacy. Yeah, that's what we're going with, right? This was all one big reaction. And this is the thing where I get in politics, you have to listen. You have to keep an open ear. You have to keep an open ear to what the people are thinking, that they're feeling, so you can act accordingly. However, you also are in charge. You also need to make decisive action. So if you come out and start making and going with the winds of change based on what your base is saying, yeah, you're doing the exact thing. You're doing the exact thing that you have accused Poilievre of doing. You're just Mr. Wavy Spine over here. Sorry, I just made that one up. But hey, spine is not there. And you're just going with whatever needs to be said to get through this. This has indicated to me that he doesn't care. He doesn't care. Sorry to break it to you. He doesn't care about anything that happens with our country and what we believe in and what our values are. because we know why he's here. He's here to enrich himself. That's simply all it says. And so anything that gets in the way of him doing that, he's just like, okay, goes what needs to be said. Okay, I gotta say this. Oh, my staff are just saying, the whole base is upset, and that's gonna keep me from being able to win more seats. Okay, let's just entertain them, I guess. U.S. stop bombing Iran. Yeah. There's no real principle to him. His principle is making money. His principle is globalism. And so globalism allows him to enrich himself and his buddies so much more. That's all this is. So anything that gets in the way of that, you see it in his demeanor. Oh my gosh, stupid. Yes, U.S., please. No, you get that. And again, Keir Starmer took the same position. So keep that in mind.
I want to make clear the UK was not involved in the offensive strikes of the US and Israel, and that remains the case. As many of you will know.
All right, so UK magically came out and had the same position the next day as well. Again, both him and Carney had very different perspectives the day this all happened. And then, we had a more nuanced approach. We left enough open holes in our original statements that we could say that we're doing this and we're being relevant and consistent with our positions, right? So as I said, Mark Carney has been stupidly pushing off the media. And why I say stupidly, because so much has been going on. So the India issue, the Iranian issue, his statements, and all the inconsistencies that people are having and watching, all brought into one press conference that he has to deal with, and it looked really bad for him. And it was just typical. We'll play a few minutes of it. You've probably seen it already at this point in time. But as I said, getting us up to speed to what was said in Australia this morning. And this is the stance. This is the theme that we're seeing. Lots of themes here. But again, he gets upset because people are pressing him. He doesn't like being pressed. As I said, anything that gets in the way of him getting rich needs to stop.
Is doing to protect citizens from foreign interference and in transnational repression, but a lot of confusion exists, including within your own cabinet, about what Canada thinks India is doing. So I'm hoping that you can clarify in a yes or no way. Do you agree with your own government official, yes or no?
How dare you ask me to answer a question, yes or no? You don't tell me what to answer with. I tell you how to ask questions. Sorry.
Who suggested India is no longer actively interfering in Canada's democratic process and that Indian agents are no longer involved in murders and extortions within Canada? Yes or no?
Well, I'm not sure that's an exact quote.
That is what he suggested.
That's not a quote.
I can read the quote.
I think, we can debate whether you had a discussion that was not for quotation, but if you want to read a quote from something that's not for quotation.
So can we talk about that for 2 seconds? I do have so much issue with this. Well, you don't have a direct quote. Well, I have the quote here. I can read it. Well, it wasn't for quotation. Dude, you intentionally, because you're a coward, intentionally leaked information of how you're dealing with the India issue through one of your advisors, one of your staff, who spoke, without name, spoke anonymously to the press and said, India's no issue anymore. And because the press is doing what the press does, it's like, yeah, we're going to honor that and not name the person. But you did that because you don't like having your name in your face tied to stupid things that get said. And now this is him trying to weasel out of that right now. He leaked that, 100%. He had that leaked by one of his staffers, or his senior staffers, to the press anonymously. So now when he gets called on it, he's like, come on, that's not a quote. Tries to play in the gray. He loves playing in the gray. But here we go.
These are the words I would use, and it's important. I would not use those words. Okay, first point. Secondly, our approach as I said in response to the first question, is one of, apologies, the second question, is one of vigilance and engagement. And we have made progress, but regardless of the progress that has been made, it is our responsibility to have both aspects. First and foremost, to be vigilant. Okay, vigilant in terms of tightening the laws, vigilant ensuring that we have the right resources at the security level, at the police level in terms of the coordination, vigilant in ensuring that those resources are active, vigilant in ensuring that we are using all sources of intelligence to direct resources to protect Canadians. And then alongside that, to be engaged with countries so that if and when there are issues or even a sense of issues that we are raising them, engagement at the level of national security, engagement at the level of defense, engagement at the level of police, engagement at the political level. All of those, and if you look at the record, if I may just finish on this, of this government in less than a year, 6 major crime bills, many of which address specifically these issues, thousands of new resources being put in the RCMP and border security, huge technical resources also being put in place. That's an odd way to put it, but physical resources in terms of surveillance, and re-engagement, including at the national security level and the political level, so that we can address these issues actually, in other words, today and prospectively, so that prevention is there as well as redress. Thank you.
I want tabbouleh with my word salad. That's what that was. That's it. What was that? We're going to walk around the bush this way, then we're going to reverse, walk around the bush this way, maybe look at the bush, maybe touch the leaves on the bush, keep walking around the bush. You have the likes of Reg in the chat right now saying, that was the most Kamala answer I've seen in my life. And yes, that's exactly what? First thing. Second thing. Sorry, the second thing, the first thing. My fellow Americans. Oh, sorry, this is Canada, my bad. This is where we're at, Like it's getting to the point of being very comical. And this is why I try to take a bit of a lighter approach to politics, because it can drive you nuts. And sometimes you just got to laugh it off. But this is the struggle he got into, because this was just one segment. He got, grilled like crazy in this press conference, and he didn't like it. And you saw it here as he's just getting snappy, laughing, smirking. Stupid. I love how David put it in his video this morning. You little peon. Like, that's kind of what he is. Like, that's the approach. That's the attitude he takes. He hates being questioned. So this sets us all up for him being in Australia. And he did like a 40-minute event at, I believe, what was it called? The Lowy Institute. I'm probably horrendously pronouncing that. And anyone who's from Australia, I apologize. So here we go. So you had this response to, you look at this again. If you catch this again, right? Let's look at, again, this response to the question that was being posed. Look at his face.
A lot of confusion exists, including within your own cabinet, about what Canada thinks India is doing. So I'm hoping that you can clarify in a yes or no way. Do you agree with your own government official, yes or no, who suggested India is no longer actively interfering in Canada's democratic process and that Indian agents are no longer involved?
It's like, yeah, smug, okay, smug, okay. But then he's going to get into an audience of people that he respects. Very World Economic Forum audience, okay? That's what we're seeing here. And the question that's asked of him here is, I'll say, an even more difficult question. And look how he still doesn't like the question. However, look how he reacts to it, though.
Regime change, and we're seeing that play out. What does President Trump's actions, what will that mean for the US role in the world in the long term? Because it does seem that his appetite for using force seems to grow with the eating. And we've seen some remarkable developments really in the last few months. The kidnapping of the Venezuelan dictator, now in conjunction with the Israelis striking at the heart of the Islamic Republic, killing indeed the supreme leader. You might think that Maduro and Khamenei were evil people, but still worry about how this affects America's position in the long run. And I wonder if we could end up in a situation where the US is feared, but not trusted or loved.
So that's a tough question. I will be honest. That's a very good direct question of like, all right, how do you feel about the U.S. and what they're doing right now and how they're being viewed on the international stage? Curious, just curious. And this is how he responds to it. He's super uncomfortable with this because, well, we got Kuzma review coming up here, folks. So be careful. Be careful how you answer this.
Where the US is feared, but not trusted or loved.
Do you want me to respond to I don't see a lot of upside to responding to this question, the way it was framed.
This is
at the back of the.
This is how Q&A works.
Yeah. Exactly. No.
That's what I love the interviewer's question on that, or the response to that. Well, do I have to answer that question? I don't like how it was framed. It was like, hey, Carney. This is how Q&A works. And this is the best part is he's sitting there flustered, embarrassed, don't know how to answer that question because it was a good question. It was a very good question. And because of everything he's been saying, his rhetoric puts him in a tough spot. So he's clearly uncomfortable. And he outwardly, overtly says, not going to answer the question.
That's true. This is look, I'm going to make an adjacent point. And adjacent, it's all relative. It's way over here adjacent. But it's a serious point, which is that in the U.S. use, Chinese use in the case of rare earths, but the U.S. use of integration as leverage, the demand, the use of tariffs to forms of extraterritoriality, not just to have different tariffs, but to dictate or try to dictate policies in countries. It could be in social media, it could be in taxation, it could be cultural policy. We've seen examples of all this. It could be
He's getting to the point.
In terms of the
might get there.
The current situation as we've seen in the last 24 hours with respect to certain European countries. It's a form, particularly the charging for access to the U.S. market, that form, it's monetizing their hegemony, said in other words, monetizing their current indispensable position in a variety of economic relationships, virtually all economic relationships. You can do that for a time, but you can't do that forever. Because the reaction, and we're seeing it start to play out, is people need to diversify. And also need to avoid becoming more tied into to a country, whether it's China in some cases or Europe, or sorry, the U.S., that will then potentially use that against you. So it's an analogy that makes it's an implicit response to your very pointed question. We have so many other topics to cover.
No, thank you for that. That's somewhat adjacent answer. Look, I think this brings us to the theme.
Thank you for that somewhat adjacent answer. Very kind way of saying thanks for not giving me an answer to my question. And that was fine to watch in a crowd and system that typically would be friendly to someone like Mark Carney. These are all elites, and these are your WEF type crowd here. But asking some very direct questions that he even can't give an answer to. As I said, Lina Diab would be so proud. She'll have some tabbouleh with that word salad right there. Outwardly saying, not going to answer the question. Feel uncomfortable answering the question. We'll talk about, using economic leverage and hegemony and this, that, the other. And if you do that, then you lose trust. Okay. We move on, I guess. Great answer. We move forward. So that's where things are at with Mark Carney and the situation. But there's one last clip from this interview that is making the rounds on social media this morning. And it was the most, it was blunt, but very daft point that Mark Carney made here that further cements his separation from the regular folk and him. And especially for millennials like myself, and then the people like my parents who had lived through this time, the 2008 crisis, seeing how he responded to this question as a central banker for Canada at this point in time, well, man, it's going to get you going. I'm warning you. It's going to get you going. So I'm talking about when he had to travel to Basel during the 2008 crisis to try and figure out a solution and work with other central bankers to figure out what they were going to do with the 2008 crisis. And he's laughing through it all, thinks it's so funny. Listen to this.
And who has more fun? Well, boy, the dinners at Basel were, I mean, they were crazy. Right? Very good wine. Yeah.
Go and tell the story. Tell it.
Well, okay, this is a long time ago. In fact, it was 2 weeks into the job at Governor of the Bank of Canada. It's February 2008. And I go there, and Bear Stearns is collapsing. It seemed like a big deal at the time. In retrospect, it's like there's nothing, but it was a big deal. And we had to decide because Asia, typical Asia was going to open. And so we go to this dinner, and it's called the G10 Central Banks. So it's a core group of central banks, and Jean-Claude Trichet is the chair. We show up, and we have an hour and a half to make a decision about flooding the system with liquidity or shutting certain things down, et cetera. It was pretty complex, but we're around this dinner table. It's like a 7-course meal. And Trichet spends the first 10 minutes. He welcomes me, which I thought was nice. Mark, welcome. And then he says, we have the best wine in Europe at this dinner. And since it's the best wine in Europe, it's the best wine in the world. And then he goes through the wines. He describes all the wines, tick, tick, tick. And he's like, well, have this one, but, the Pinot Grigio. And I'm like, fine. And then he finishes it, and he says, okay, listen, we have an hour. And he says, okay, we have to decide because the politicians are useless, basically, as he says, and if we don't decide here, all is lost. Ben, what should we do? Anyways, an hour later, all I remember is I'm like, yeah, the wine is fantastic. How much are we on the hook for? But anyways, we got it done. So yeah, the central bankers have a lot more fun, and we're working all the time. No fun, no rest.
Right.
A lot of layers to that, right? First off, shows how he, as a central banker, views politicians, and him and his friends view politicians. Think they're a waste of time. They don't do anything. Central bankers do everything, which just is starting to make his rhetoric around the election last April make so much more sense. Of him talking about how I took care of 2008. Harper didn't. I was here. I took care of 2008. Bro, you had one job in 2008. It was, do we bring down interest rates or do we increase interest rates? That's all you did in 2008. Stephen Harper was working through the actual policy to navigate the 2008 crisis. You did nothing. In the grand scheme, you did nothing. But here he is, sitting in front of all of his peers, people that he respects, laughing about traveling to Basel during the 2008 crisis, having a 7-course meal, drinking the most expensive wines in Europe. All while you lost your house, you lost your job, couldn't afford your mortgage. That's what he was doing. Almost the same as what's happening now. People can't afford their mortgage, can't afford their groceries, can't afford their power. And he's over here taking private meetings, personal meetings on the taxpayer dollar while in Australia and getting up on stage and doing crap like this. And outwardly saying, politicians are a joke. We don't take them seriously. Politicians are a joke, a waste of space. Why did you decide to become one? Oh, I don't know, because now you're in a position of power to dictate what policy is going to be so that you can get rich? Maybe they're not so useless. Maybe the central bank position, where we turn the interest rate up or interest rate down, that's all we do here, doesn't do as much as you claim it does. But I took care of the 2008. This proves all that to be BS and everything about him. about how he views things, about how he does things, is starting to make so much more sense in his attitudes towards the working class, towards even the political establishment, and us as people. This was eye-opening for me. This was eye-opening. And shout out Mackenzie Gray for clipping this from Global Mail, or Global News. I always get those two mixed up. Shout out to him for this. But this was eye-opening for me. Bragging about 7-course meals in the midst of a financial crisis, debating if they're going to flood the system with liquidity or not. It was really complex. Yeah. Our job was better. Our job was better because our job was more important than navigating policy. All right, I leave it there, man. There's just so much to say about that. There's a lot to say about that. Well, let's go to the chat here, folks. What do you guys think? What do you guys think right now? Holy jumping. All right. Holy smokes, we got a lot to catch up on here. All right. Jessica, just wanted to bring in some interesting thoughts. Bring interesting thoughts. She says, a meteor struck in southern BC last night. That's fascinating. Interesting. HD Dave says this. It's almost like Islam is the problem globally. I'm trying to figure out what that was. Again, it's been so long. What was that response to? There's a lot of debate about. I've had private conversations about this one, and this is gonna be very unpopular. Where I'm not so quick to make that statement. And I think the issue that we're currently seeing and witnessing is more so the idea that we have these individuals, because there's a lot of people who do practice Islam or practicing Muslims in our country who don't wish death on us. But it's these radical Islamists that are really the issue, that want us all dead. That's the issue that we're seeing. And so I think it is important. I know that's going to be an unpopular position because I know that things have become so divisive in our rhetoric. However, I know people and I've seen people where just like, no, I know the argument is when you take Islam to its fullest extent, it's wanting to kill people. And that is that is an element of that's true. But there's people that just want to practice their religion as well, and not take it to those extremes. And I also want to make sure that those people don't feel that they're gonna be targeted either. So that's kind of I'm taking a very Mark Carney approach, I guess, here at this point. And there's just some serious nuance to that. And so I'm not so quick to blanket that Islam is a problem with the world. Radical Islamists, I think, are a huge issue, are a huge problem. And they have been using sleeper cells in our country to destabilize our Western nations. That is true. That's happening. The IRGC has been doing that. So I'll leave that there. That's a very sensitive topic, but it's a fun one in terms of having some more difficult conversations to be had. But yes, here we go. Boye 180 says Carney needs to quit holding on to an order that is frankly now irrelevant. If the U.S. is not enforcing order, there is no order. Yep. Yep. Exactly. But he's holding on to that because it's politically convenient at the moment. We never used to call it virtue signaling. We called it talking the face off a horse. Sorry, Renee R1T says this. Interesting. Okay. Snow 181 says this whole Iran conflict is a result of the UN and its lack of will to actually do anything useful. They should have stepped in back in '79 when Islamic extremists overthrew the legitimate government. That's a good point. That is a good point. It just shows the lack of action and relevance of the UN on so many levels, and the fact that they should have been doing their jobs and they didn't. Should have been, but they didn't. Now we have a point where the largest military superpower in the world is saying screw you to the UN because they haven't been doing their jobs, and there's a lack of trust in the institution now. And now China's getting in there and it's like, yeah, we'll help out. It's getting messy for sure. All sorts, Michelle says, Carney needs training in dealing with geopolitical matters. Yes. I agree. Or he's purposely doing this as well, because keeping people divided and scared is actually how he holds power. So he might very well know what he needs to be doing, but he doesn't want to do the correct thing because he needs people to stay scared and uncertain. Dale Burrows, 7688, says the Prime Minister is so corrupt. He is not for Canada. What a joke. Gee, those are some big feelings today. But I understand them. Jessica says, what are you drinking, Josh? Okay, this is not an ad, but I'm drinking a mixture of things here. I got Joy Burst as my energy drink, or I should say as my hydration drink, and then just drinking some bubbly water. That's what I'm drinking today. Andrew Russell, 19, says, did Carney stop in Iran for strategic partnership? Yeah, he's like stopped by the IRGC. He's like, all right, before this whole thing gets blown up, let's do a deal. We can bring more. I know we're protecting about 700 of you guys over here. However, we want to bring more. And maybe we can bring some media over as well. And maybe we can just share national intelligence with you. We can do that as well. Yes, 100%. We have Rohi Kumarja. Sorry, killing that one. My fault. That's my fault. He says, between us, can confirm India's RAW will continue its op in Canada till every such gang is removed. To stop it, remove these gangs from Canada. It's simple. And this is the issue, isn't it, man? I love how, I think the best part about this is saying, between us, I can confirm that India's RAW will continue its op until every Canadian gang is removed. I tend to agree with that. We continue to act as if this Palestinian group doesn't exist here. That all this nonsense. It just say what you want. You can be a Palestinian sympathizer, this, that, the other, sure. But them being here and espousing the hatred that they've espoused, the violence they've brought into our country over the decades at this point, has now invited more violence into our country because we don't deal with it here. Everyone else is coming into our house and dealing with our mess. And it's a tough watch. It's a tough watch. Terrible. Drop another $2 on the show. Thanks, Terrible. Appreciate it. Soon as Soul Silver. Haven't seen you in a while, sir. It's glad to have you back. UN priorities protecting political PDF and censor fictional characters made in Japan to protect the children. Utter incompetence. I think I know what you're saying there. There was a lot of shorthand to make sure you weren't getting censored, but I think I know what you're saying there. I got you. I'll go back to that one. There's a lot in there. Scotty Ward says, Hijra Jihad, the slow internal takeover of a nation. It's been done so many times, Islam has a name for it. Fair play. It's funny, actually. I need to look more into the history of some of the wars that took place in the Middle East and other nations in the name of Islam. I actually have to look into those a little more, seeing kind of what happened and what was going on. Because I know there was so many different holy wars that have been taking place over the years, and kind of the motivations behind them. And I'm curious to look into more of those. Aaron M TV says, sometime we'll have to chat. I have a little channel here covering similar stuff. I think you do a great job, brother. Keep spreading the awareness. Thanks, man. I got to check out your stuff. I want to check that out, see what you're doing. Reg, come in with a $5 super chat. I love that, dude. Let's go. Dropping $5 on the show. Hey, guys, if you can share your thoughts on the affordability policy, I'd love to share the totals on Friday. Let's go. Can I pin this? No, I can't pin it. But yes, go do that. Go share that up. It's awesome. Alas, we are going into the last half of our show with Pierre Poilievre making some moves, making some statements, doing some speeches, and sharing about the positivity of free markets and making sure we keep those available in our nations and not allowing different exterior forces to disrupt free markets because, well, it kind of helps propel Western civilization, propels our society forward, and continues to bring stability to our nations. And so he did a solid, what was it, like a 28-minute speech. I'm gonna watch like a 2-minute clip of this where he talks about more so the free market situation. Go watch the whole thing. It's very well done. This is what he had to say.
You want to sell what the consumer buys, you have to see through the consumer's eyes. Smith did not invent the free market economy. He discovered it just at the moment in history when these economies were embracing it over serfdom. So we can compare the before and after to see which approach worked. Before 1776, there was literally no economic growth. Estimates by Angus Madison show that between the year 1 and the year 1700, per capita GDP measured in 1990 dollars grew from about $444 to $615 in 1700 years, meaning barely any growth in living standards in those 17 centuries. From 1820 to 2000, per capita GDP went from $667 to $5,700. Now let me put this into context. On average, in the free market period, the economy would grow as much in 1 year as it would have grown in the average 200 years in the pre-free market period. Life expectancy literally doubled from the year 1800 to 75 from 35. And then there's transportation. Winston Churchill famously noted that Sir Robert Peel in 1841 took just as long to go from London to Rome as a Roman Empire would have taken to go from Rome to London 2,000 years or earlier. In other words, there was literally no improvement in transportation technology in that 2 millennia. Then, in a little more than a century, we went from horses and sailboats to jet engines and men on the moon. More advancement in a century and a half of free enterprise than in the prior 2,000 years combined.
So that gives you a bit of a hint in the stuff he was talking about. And I really liked how he painted the picture of what happened before we introduced, some serious technological advances, free market, and what it's brought our people over the course of the centuries and over the course of centuries at this point. And it was a really good job of breaking down the compare and contrast of when we weren't doing this versus when we were doing this. And he's in the pre-free market period versus the free market period. And the amazing advancements we saw, the improvement of quality of life, the increase of life expectancy, all these things. This is what the free market brought. And this is the tour I'm enjoying Pierre Poilievre give right now. Is he silently, or I don't say silently, he's in a more subdued way taking a really solid effort and shot at those who keep pushing socialism and communist ideals and saying, hey, enough. In this speech, he also talks about protectionism when it comes to tariffs and stuff like that, because he's obviously going to be, he's speaking very directly to Donald Trump and wanting to try and have a free tariff deal. So he's going to be talking about how protectionism has impeded some of that growth as well. But this is the stuff he's discussing, is he's coming at a more thoughtful approach on really, or I guess I would say more thoughtful approach to dealing with the likes of what's happening in our country these days, where you have these socialists who just decide that, if we just regulate everything and police everything, we'll police everything into prosperity. It'll be great. And it's not working. It's actually bringing down our quality of life in a almost, let's say, managed decline. So now he's going out and having these talks. You saw the Economic Club of Canada and the speech he gave there, which was very well done. UK speech, also very well done. And then he also gave, we'll watch the first minute and a half. Oh, sorry, actually, before we do that, CBC was very critical. Thought, it was a good speech. However, he gave it to a room of people that agree with him. That was the criticism of CBC. And it's just kind of laughable considering what we just watched here as Mark Carney was giving a speech, and they also referenced the Carney's Davos speech and how awesome it was. And then Pierre's speech, it was good, but it was to a group of people that agree with him. Even though in Davos, it was to a group of people that all agreed with him. And then he's also doing more talks where he's in rooms with people that just agree with him. It was a pretty weak critique of Pierre Poilievre, and an unfair one if they're not going to apply that same critique to Mr. Mark Carney. But Pierre Poilievre dropped this video this morning, and we'll watch the first minute or so, but you're going to start seeing a lot more of this, and we're already seeing such a different rejuvenation of Pierre Poilievre, his image, and how he's going to be pushing the party forward. So watch this.
Is the king. In fact, the name Runnymede means the meadow where council is taken. It was the first proto-parliament right here in these hills. And it is in this field that the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, was born. This is the place in June 1215 where barons forced King John to sign the Great Charter. 800 years later, we still look back at this document signed in this place as a turning point in the history of freedom and the rule of law. Well, many of the more than 60 clauses of the Magna Carta have fallen out of use or been replaced. Some of them are a little hard to understand. Talk of fish weirs and wapentakes, whatever those are, seem irrelevant today. But if you squint hard, you can peer through the Old English and ancient disputes and see the familiar and cherished rights that we take for granted today. No arrest without charge, trial without jury, confiscation without compensation, and my favorite, one the Americans think they invented but started right here in these fields, no taxation without representation.
So there you go. This is the strategy, what we're going to start seeing now. Is Pierre Poilievre is going on a tour of restoring the Canadian identity, of which was always a struggle in general because we struggled with our identity, period. But this is him trying to do stuff where you get back to the roots of how we came to be as Canadians. And you're going to start seeing more messaging like this come from him of reminding Canadians where we've come from, all the amazing things that have been accomplished, and helping Canadians restore their pride in their country once again. You're going to start seeing a lot more of this, I have a feeling. This is just a taste. And we'll see where it goes. This is getting mighty fascinating, especially in the issue of what we've seen in the chat. We see in the chat, and I 100%, I know I have a plethora of people who follow this show who are very much in favor of Alberta independence, and we have that debate and discussion all the time, and I think it's a good discussion debate to have. But Pierre Poilievre is going to keep pushing this messaging to try and unify a country that has been so fractured by, well, divisive liberal policies. That's just the reality. That's not partisanship. That's just truth. So that's what you're going to start seeing more of. We'll see if people respond to it well, or if we are just too far gone in our division. We'll see where it goes. I already saw a plethora of different reactions to this in the chat, where people felt goosebumps, felt encouraged about this video, and some are laughing at it. So we'll see where it goes. That's the debate. I admit I had a fantastic time yesterday. Jamil Giovanni came into town and was doing his Restore the North tour. And yeah, it was a good time. And, we got to meet some of you folks who live here in Halifax and who are fans of the show. It's fantastic meeting you, and he was great. And we'll see where all this goes here, folks. And I will read the last little bit of the super chats, and we'll end off, folks. We'll end off. Scotty War says, "This is how socialism is called out." Hear, hear. Yes. It's so easy to take the approach, and naturally, we do on this show, it's so natural to point out how socialism is bad. But I'm really enjoying the approach that Poilievre's taking here of saying, yes, socialism's bad, and I don't like where this is all going. And it's getting to the point where it's degrading our way of life. But let's actually show a spotlight of what things used to be like, the values that we used to hold to, And let's uphold those values instead of just talking down the socialist values. So it's a much more effective approach, especially during these times. But yeah, I agree. Scotty War, dang straight. Apparently there's a troll in the chat. Everyone's losing their minds. I love it. Yeah, it's a great time. It's a great time. But anyways, folks, we are going to leave it there. I'll see you this afternoon, whatever it is you're doing. I actually got to, it was fantastic. I met an individual, an amazing young woman, first year at Dalhousie, who listens to the show live streaming while she's doing her algebra homework. It's great. So whatever you're doing, whether you be doing your algebra homework or you be doing more stuff at work or just trying to enjoy a nice day off, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.